Hello and welcome to week 6 of Health 402 Research Methods in Public Health. To get started, you can click on the link here for the week 6 module. So for this week, I'm going to click on the overview page. We are going to be talking about survey research. So survey research, you're probably familiar with. You've probably learned about this in some of your previous classes. We did cover creating surveys in Health 318, Applied Epidemiology, so some of this might be a review, but you're also going to learn some new information as well this week. By the end of this week, you should feel pretty confident in your ability to create a survey and also find survey items for a given research study. So for your items to complete for this week, you need to complete the module, and you're also going to read Chapter 13. You also have a discussion number 6, you've got an initial post due on Thursday and your reply post due on Sunday, as well as your quiz that's due on Sunday. Again, make sure to read all of the material in Chapter 13 and complete the module before you sit down to take that quiz. You'll attend lab, and then for lab, you are going to need to create a free Qualtrics account. At least one person in your group should create that Qualtrics account. Please don't pay for it. You should just be able to set up a free account that you'll use for lab. This week, we are going to cover a number of things related to survey research. There's a variety of different ways we can actually collect surveys. So, for example, we can do online computer-based surveys. We can also do paper surveys. You're going to learn about the different ways in which we can collect survey data. We are also going to cover actually writing survey items, so how to actually write survey items, how to find existing survey items. We typically want to use survey items that are based on existing survey questions, or we might be able to modify existing survey questions. We're going to also learn about the order effects that can happen. So asking questions in a certain order can be really important and can have an effect on the responses that you get. We're also going to cover visual design of surveys. This can also be really important in getting people to take your survey. We're also going to cover quality responses. So as researchers, how do we make sure that people are actually reading our survey questions and responding with accurate answers? We'll also cover things like eligibility criteria and including those in our surveys. And then we'll also briefly talk about response rates. I know it's often hard to know what a good response rate is, so we'll talk about response rates a little bit as well. I do want to note that you might want to go through this page here, this finding survey items before lab, because you are going to need to find survey items for your actual lab assignment. So there's some information on there that will be really helpful in terms of providing information on how we actually find survey items. For your lab this week, you are actually going to create a survey in Qualtrics, which is an online survey platform. It's a platform that is commonly used in research to set up questions, all different types of questions, and we use that to collect data. So make sure that you review that finding survey items and also get registered for that free Qualtrics account so you're ready to go for lab this week. Let's briefly go over your discussion posts for this week. So for your initial post, there are 3 parts. The first part, you're just going to restate your research question just so everyone else in the class has an idea of what you're doing. And then in part 2, I want you to tell me if you are planning to use a survey to collect data for your research proposal. I know a lot of you are, so if you are, you can tell me that. If you're not, you need to tell me how you plan to collect the data. So please make sure to think about that. And then in part 3, regardless of what your answer is to part 2, I want you all to pretend that you are going to use a survey for your research proposal. The first thing I want you to tell me is which survey mode you're going to use and why. So think about if you're going to use a phone administered survey where someone is on the phone and they conduct essentially an interview with the other person who answers the phone. Are you going to do an online self-administered survey, a mailed self-administered survey? Think about which mode is going to be best and why. For example, maybe I am doing a study that looks at the relationship between health beliefs and flu vaccine uptake in older adults in California. So maybe I've decided that I'm going to use a phone-administered survey as well as a mailed self-administered survey because given my population of interest, older adults, I don't think an online survey would be the most appropriate for my population of interest. Then you need to state one limitation to using that survey mode. So for example, if I was using mailed self-administered surveys, one of the limitations to that is respondents could easily skip large numbers of questions. And then based on your research question, I want you to think about the eligibility criteria that you would use. Again, this is going to depend on the population of interest that you're trying to understand. So maybe you have a certain age group that you're trying to recruit. You're also supposed to be looking in California. So maybe you want somebody who lives in California. You'll need to think about the definition of a California resident. So maybe one of your eligibility criteria questions is, have you lived in California for at least 6 months? And then lastly, I want you to think about the types of items that you would include. So think about whether you're going to include open-ended and or closed-ended items. And I want you to describe the general types of items that you could use in a survey for your research proposal. So most of you should have demographics items that you're going to include. The other thing that you'll probably want is items around whether or not someone has been vaccinated for a specific vaccine. You'll also need to think about other items that you might need to include, and that might depend on your research question. So maybe you're interested in health belief items given your research question that you've come up with. So you want to think about what are those specific items that you might need to include in your survey. And then by Sunday, you just need to reply to a classmate's, provide one suggestion or piece of advice for them to consider. Please make sure it's a specific suggestion or piece of advice. Simply saying that you agree with what they've done isn't necessarily a suggestion or piece of advice. So please make sure to be specific with that for full points. So that's the plan for this week. Again, make sure to complete the module, read chapter 13. You're going to complete those discussion posts as well as your quiz, and then you'll attend lab. And for lab, make sure to set up that free Qualtrics account before coming to lab, and then also review that page in the module on finding survey items.